Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
A friend of my father's told me a story about when he was a truck driver in Australia. He mainly used to drive between Melbourne and Sydney, but he was filling in for someone that had to drive between Melbourne and Mackay, about a 2,700-kilometer trip, the route he was taking. He decided to go inland, as opposed to following the coastal highways, so that he could avoid the tourist and retiree traffic. This happened sometime in the late 1970s or early 80s. He spent all day on the road before pulling up in Narrabri, a town in northern New South Wales near the Queensland border. He went to a local service station for a meal and asked about accommodation. The only place in town that was available he wasn't happy with, as he would not be able to keep an eye on the truck. Plus, he was pretty tight with cash, so he decided he would just drive for another hour or so and sleep in the truck cabin. He was talking to another trucker and the lady running the service station restaurant, and when they found out he was heading north, down the highway through the Pilliga forest, they gave him a weird look. No one camps in that forest at night. At first he thought it was unruly locals or other criminals they were worried about. Eventually, they told him the story of the Yowie, which is like an Australian Bigfoot, but the name refers to the call it makes. He thinks they are playing a joke on him, to have a laugh at his expense. So he finishes dinner and drives out of town. He drives for another hour or so, finds a spot where he can park off the highway and tries to get some sleep, because he is only halfway toward where he needs to be to make the delivery. He said he woke up at midnight due to some animal call. He thought it sounded like a woman screaming. He heard it again and decided it was a fox. He tried to go back to sleep and he heard the scream again. It was not a fox or a person or an owl. He said the hair on the back of his neck stood up. My father's friend was so rattled, he was afraid to make noise by breathing. He heard something moving around outside the truck, but he was too afraid to poke his head out and see what it was. Then he felt something rocking the trailer of the truck. Not just pushing up against it, but rocking it. At this point, he decides, screw this, I'm out of here, and shifts in order to get in the driver's seat, start the truck and drive away. He said that the moment he jingled the truck keys, he heard the shriek again and he was paralyzed with fear. He does not know how long he remained perfectly still for. He said he felt like a mouse hiding from a cat. Eventually, he saw some lights moving down the highway, the headlights of another truck. That was his chance. He waited until the truck was closer, then jumped in the driver's seat, fired up the engine, turned on the lights, and drove away. He did not stop driving until dawn, and even after he pulled over in another town, he was still too shaken to sleep. I don't know if this is a true story, partly true, or if my dad's friend was just telling a ghost story for laughs. Every time I've asked about it, he says he's telling the truth, but I don't know.
Be me. Have weird dreams often wake up and hallucinate what I was dreaming. Often dream of the spaces I'm sleeping in, too. One night I walk over to the neighboring room and see a shadowy being hurtled in the corner. Get uncomfortable with the vibes and try to scare it off, out of instinct. Feel kind of bad. Feel really bad, actually. Wake up feeling bad, more than I would from a normal dream. Being the spook fan I am, grab my equipment and snoop about. EMF meter jumps about weirdly. Even more weird in that room. Literally fluctuating 20 to 40 every few seconds. Figure, hell with it. Hey, I'm sorry, that was kind of rude of me. If you want to be chill, we can be chill. I don't mind a ghost roomie. Weird feeling leaves. EMF returns to normal. Have the same dream. Don't be hostile towards the shadow mass this time. It gets up and we just chill on that couch for a bit. Gets more of a solid shape as we vibe. 'Tis pretty chill. Wake up. More shadows in my room than normal. Passes as I wake up more, but that's a weird post-dream hallucination. Check the EMF meter. Going off weird. Check the radio scanner. Anyone there? Nothing. Check it again the next night. Actually get some responses. Just playing some video in bed with it on. Kind of cozy, not really getting great answers, but speaking with this particular spook is kind of calming. Get a text from a friend, reply with some snark. Brutal. Had a good little kick at that, not gonna lie. Sleep that night. The ghost is cuddling me. Wake up, full sleep paralysis, I am being cuddled by a ghost. Literally see the arm around me, feel her against me. Weirdly cozy. Like cold but not uncomfortable. Wake up, feel a strong sense of serenity. Haven't seen or heard from her since.
When my mother went into labor to give birth to me, the ambulance had to drive down a highway in the middle of the night. Every 100 feet or so on both sides of the road, there was a tree completely engulfed in flames. They were almost completely evenly placed along the entire highway, and they didn't drive past anyone else along the way. Despite having to drive 30 kilometers along this road, the clock in the ambulance didn't change at all until they turned off and there were no more burning trees. Upon arriving at the hospital, the ambulance drivers alerted the fire department that there were burning trees all along the highway, and of course people were dispatched, but they found no burning trees or signs of anything burning. Also, when my parents were coming home with me for the first time along that highway, it was midday, and at some point along the way, there was what sounded like a woman screaming, and the sky went green for about 5 full seconds. Oddly enough, nothing spoopy or paranormal has ever happened to me since. On a related note, when my mother was pregnant with my older sister, whenever she went outside, crows would always gather over time and just stare at her. My mother actually panicked at one point because she'd been doing some gardening and looked up to see at least 150 crows all sitting along the roof and fence silently and staring at her.
Just a smaller one. I don't know what to think of it. A long time ago, I thought that my mother was a total nutcase, but now I'm not sure anymore. I'll post it in parts. Mother believes in ghosts. Says she's a medium. Not an esoteric believer, actually. Someone told her when she was younger and she didn't know anything about it. Was pressured into doing some seance-like stuff back then by that person. She's 60 now. Saw a ghost of a young man in her old flat. Saw a couple in our garden from the window. Also saw an old lady once in our attic. Told this to my father. Apparently an older woman lived and died here before his family moved in. Attic was a laundry room at that time. Won't tell me everything she saw in her life, because she doesn't want to make a fuss out of it. Also said, I can only believe what I saw myself. She moved here about 40 years ago, thus I've been living here my whole life. There are a lot of spooky things happening from paranormal to non-paranormal, but our house is actually the last one built in our street, about 80 years old. My mother, brother, and I were living together at that time. FYI, you could live pretty well in our attic and there was no possibility of animals up there. Hooray for Germany. Some things that are still very livid in my memory. B7. Living in the attic. Suddenly all brass rings fall from the ceiling lights with 4 or 5 seconds delay. Mom, I'm scared. Don't be scared, it's just our poltergeist. B9. The bathroom mirror bursts open in the middle of the night. Go and look because it was loud. Things inside are scattered on the floor, just a few. Mirror was secured with magnets and you had to use a bit of force to open it. Mama! Half asleep. It's just our poltergeist. Didn't get to the toilet that night. B10. Don't really remember much about it. I think I saw a ghost in my room. Scared shitless. Afraid of the dark from that day on. Repressing that memory until now. Me and my mother exchanged rooms. She moved into the attic and I moved downstairs. It was convenient at that time because I had a lot of friends over daily. Loved our attic though. You could hear footsteps when someone was walking above and some creaking of the floorboards, but that's because our attic floor is really poorly made. My brother finally moved to his girlfriend's place, B12, in the living room with my mother. Hear creaking, not the footsteps noises though. Oh well. It's just the wooden floor. It's been getting pretty cold lately. Perfectly normal. 10 minutes later. It doesn't stop. Scared of the dark. Didn't look up the stairs into the attic. At some point, my mother yelled from her couch, God damn it, stop it already! Keck mum as if that'd do anything. Continued for 2 minutes. Silence. Our poltergeist, remember? He's a good one, though. B15. Sleep over at my place. Tell friends that they can get some cookies or whatever from our small storeroom. There wasn't enough space for a person to fit in. Anon, I tried to open the door, but it jerked back instantly. Is it stuck? Go there. Open it without problems. He looks baffled. Are you serious, dude? B16. Some other smaller occurrences happened, I don't remember much. Mom stopped talking about a poltergeist or something. If something happens, I know it isn't real. I've grown up, you know. Start to ignore each and everything linked to ghosts. Screw the darkness and screw ghosts, I'm not scared. Everything is chill until now. But in the last years, things got a bit different. B18. First sleep paralysis ever. Gollum wrong turn like a creature with yellow eyes, looking at me while creeping from my door to my table. Disappears. Scared. Almost broke my arm while trying to move. Mom, can we talk? I don't feel well. Yeah, calm down. Remember that time when I told you about the devil that sits on my chest at night? Actually, later, I found one single image that depicts sleep paralysis like this. Thank Mom. B19. My mother came into my room, panicking at noon. I didn't sleep well. Apparently, she saw a man with corrugated metal standing in front of her bed, making really loud noises and looking angry. When she started waking up, he was gone. Yeah, Mom, you just dreamed it. I don't know. I'll sleep in the living room today. B20. Suddenly, I get afraid of dark corners again. Shivers down my spine as I'm typing this. Actually had to turn on the lights, afraid that there's something in the dark I can't see. There have been some minor things that I can't clearly remember, but in my opinion, the things happening have become more aggressive over the years. Mostly it's just my mother that's affected though, and not me. I think my mother has either gotten me paranoid and scared for life with her freaking ghost stories, or I'm something like a medium too. I still don't really believe in ghosts and things like this, but my mother is not a person to just make up stuff either. Also, she's in a very healthy mental condition. The texted stories are harmless though. These were just the ones I could clearly remember.
I have one from when I was like 5 or 6. My mother and aunt both experienced it and they swear it's true. 20 years ago. Living in a house with mom, dad and aunt because of the new country, new lives, aunt was in the process of looking for own place. Dad works full-time, comes home late, tired, always sleeps like a rock. Mom obviously sleeps in the same room as dad, aunt has her own room. Mom wakes up in the middle of the night. Hears sounds coming from downstairs, the living room. Sounds like a lot of people talking, music playing. A party or something, right under her bedroom. Gets up and sneaks into the corridor, sees my aunt peeking out of her room. They both hear it, scared as shit. Me in my room next to my aunt sleeping. They quietly argue whether or not to wake up my dad, who is sleeping through all of it. They decide it might be a TV or radio on. For whatever unlogical reason. Slowly walk down the stairs and to the closed living room door. A sound is coming right from the other side of the door. It sounds like there's 10 people walking around, dancing, talking, music playing. Mom and aunt are scared shitless and looking at each other. Aunt decides to go for it and Leroy Jenkins busts through the door. All of a sudden no sounds, dark, quiet as hell in the blink of an eye. Turn on the light and everything seems normal. They went to wake up my dad and told him everything. He laughed it off as them dreaming or sounds coming from the outside or something. Still don't believe them.
When I was a freshman in college, I had what is to this day the most terrifying experience of my life. One night I had been up hanging out with friends until around 1 a.m. when I decided it was finally time to get ready for bed. I lived in a freshman dorm, with long hallways of bedrooms and common, shared bathrooms in the middle of each floor. I walked into our floor's bathroom and started getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth, washing my face, etc. While I was washing my face, I instantaneously had the wind knocked out of me and struggled to catch my breath. Nothing physically hit me, but I felt such a tremendously overwhelming feeling of evil behind me that I literally was paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move. For several seconds, I could not breathe. I remember the pressure in the room changing and my ears literally popping. I knew that something was behind me in that room, and I swear to you, I knew that if I would have looked into the mirror to see what was behind me, I would probably be institutionalized. It was that scary. I basically sprinted down the hall and into my room once I could move, breathe again, literally hiding under my covers and pillow until I finally fell asleep quite some time later. Approximately 6 or 7 years later, I was talking with another man who graduated from that same college 3 years after I did. We had a lot in common and had served as a teacher's assistant for the same professor. This man knew a bit about my family's history with ghosts and spirits and asked me to share some of my stories. When I told him the story of my experience in that residence hall, he was stunned. He told me that the professor we both had worked for had told him years earlier that the campus had been struggling with a demonic presence at the same time I had my experience. He also said that our professor had an identical experience to my own in his office late one evening. I have never felt pure, powerful evil like that before, nor have I ever felt as scared in my entire life. Part of me wonders what I would have seen had I looked up into the mirror, but I am mostly thankful that I did not.
Told this before on the board a while ago but was hasty. It's a story that intrigued me since I was about 12 years old, not my experience, never had one. Might take a few posts as I want to give some background/context. When we were kids, my dad managed to get in touch with an old friend who had moved to a rural part of Scotland, a place in Ayrshire, and he'd been keeping in touch for a while. Then my dad decided we would visit them for a weekend. I'd never met these people before. Mother was a nurse, the man who my dad was friends with was a mechanic, they had 2 sons, one an older teen who I hardly saw and a kid my age, so was me, my brother and this kid most of the weekend. There was some old circular, grassy area near his house with some large rocks, like a miniature Stonehenge. We hung out there for a while and he told us various rumors that people had seen various things there, from paranormal shit to supposed big cats, panthers, allegedly, and my older brother was making fun of it. He then said his dad had told him a story of a man made of wood or something. We're going back 30 years, but we were laughing and making fun of him. Anyway, we went back to his house and had dinner, playing video games while the grown-ups had drinks and stuff. His dad came into the room a few times, drunk he got the jollier. Then he came in and was telling us to switch off and get to bed. His kid was like telling them about the wooden man they don't believe in. He's like, "What? No." Seems a bit embarrassed. Kid pushes it and he's like, "Okay, but after I tell you then it's lights out." So he started off as a kid. He and some friends collected some old wood/timber to build a hut/den. We also did this as kids. It was a common thing for kids to do in Scotland, probably elsewhere I dunno. They all nicked tools from their dad's toolboxes, saws, hammers, whatever they could find. They had a chopper, which I took to mean a machete or axe for clearing away bushes and trees on the chosen site for their den. They built the den and were happy. It was getting dark, so they were gathering their tools to head home. Next thing, the bushes behind the den start to rustle. They look over and see an old trampy-looking man emerge from the bushes. I remember him saying this fellow was wearing a lot of clothes and looked fairly harmless. They asked if he was okay. The man didn't answer, but slowly walked towards them, getting agitated. I suppose they asked again, "Mister, are you okay?" Nothing, just moving closer. They start to back up a bit, then suddenly the old fellow lunges forward and grabs my dad's friend, young teenage boy, by the throat and starts to strangle him. He said he heard his friend screaming to let him go and started to panic, a lot of pressure and pain. This is where I started to believe him. His tone changed and his eyes began to water a bit. He said he didn't want to and was reluctant, but survival instinct took over. He couldn't escape. He was holding this tool or chopper, though, so he struck the old man right across the forehead with a lot of force. I'm trying hard to remember best I can, but I distinctly remember him telling us he shouldn't have done that, which confused me at the time being a young lad, like fuck that the guy was trying to strangle you. Anyways, this is the weird bit. He said when he hit this man on the head, it wasn't what he expected. He said his head literally splintered like a tree would if you hit it with an axe. Splinters of wood popped out in all directions and there was no blood, nor did the man react with pain, but he did let go. They ran off. He said he looked back as they were running and the man wasn't chasing them, but he said he saw the man bend down and pick something up from the ground at his feet and put it in his pocket. They kept running. He was scared and told someone, I think his dad or mother, and they took the kids back to where this happened to look around, thinking an old man was probably injured or dead. Nobody there, but the den they'd built was wrecked. He said he was really worried that he was in trouble. It was a rural area and homeless people back then in a place like that would be rare. After I shared this, recently, I got really curious about it and asked my dad. He has lost contact with this fellow again. They haven't spoken in years. Dad said he knows nothing of it, but this guy moved around a lot and they weren't like tight or close, best friends. They were friends, but he was a bit of a drifter. He said he finds the story odd, but the guy is pretty straight and not prone to telling tales.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.